Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are back with our bonded book club discussion. This past month, we read I'm Judging You, the Do Better Manual by Luvvie Ajayi. Before I jump into the book, I want to talk a little bit about why we decided to do the book club. So at the beginning of the year, Brittany and I spent a lot of time talking about New Year's resolutions and whether or not we think they are a good thing or a bad thing, and we decided both of us wanted to read more books this year. And it's something that, we both love to read, but we get busy and life gets in the way, and so that was something that was always getting put on the back burner. So we're like, okay, we want to read more books. We want to read a book a month. How are we going to keep ourselves accountable? How are we going to make that resolution happen? So we came up with the idea of the Bonded Book Club because so many of our friends were also having the same problem. We thought, okay, we'll do this and we'll do it together. So what a great idea. Super fun. We're all excited. The first 2 months were a piece of cake. Got through both my books. I was done early. Now, starting in March, I found myself unable to make myself read. And this was this moment I was like, this is exactly why we're doing this. This is exactly why having the book club is such great accountability, because all of a sudden I was like back in school and I just didn't want to do my homework. I moved this past month, so I was like just distracted and busy and never wanted to sit down. But I did it. This is not a commentary on Luvvie's book or what I thought of it. I just had a hard time making myself read, but I'm really happy because this kept me accountable. I finished the book, and I'm really glad I did. There was like parts of it I really enjoyed and I thought it was a good book, but it doesn't mean it's always easy. By 6 months, most people, more than half, have quit their New Year's resolutions, and sometimes that's for good reason. Something that serves you in December or January might not necessarily be good for you in April or even September. But I'm sticking with it. New Year's resolution continues. Bonded Book Club continues. Okay. So that was just my little, I don't know if anyone else was having a hard time reading this month, but I was. And so I'm really glad that I did it. The first section that we're going to look at today is Luvvie's chapter called Dumbed Down News, and it starts on page 178. And the first question I have regarding this chapter is this. So on page 180, Luvvie writes, I understand the traditional press is trying to compete by making sure they are constantly stay on the pulse of things and report them as they happen. However, this means they are not taking the time to confirm stories, verify sources, and double-check facts. In the culture of first, it is easy to fall into this trap because if you aren't first, are you relevant? So I pose that question to all of you. Are you relevant if you're not first? For me, the answer is absolutely. I remember in law school, I had this professor and he loved to give life advice. And one thing he would say to us all the time, and this was sort of in the context of if you're going into a firm setting and you want to get ahead and how are you going to impress, your senior partners? He's like, you have to be first, but you have to be right. Because if you're not right when you're first, you're useless. It's not giving you anything of substance or value. So I think while first is important, fast is important, it's more important to have the right facts and to know what's going on. And you can become a trusted source. And so I think, when we look at our media, we need to continually confirm that it is most important that the stories being reported are accurate, that they're true, and that is what is going to be the most relevant and important in our lives. So that's question one. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that. Question two. In our current political and news climate, we have two different but related problems at work. First is the idea that it is better to report first, which is what we just talked about, without necessarily fact-checking, but you're first. Now, the second problem is that there is a deliberate creation and spreading of fake news that is happening on a level I don't think we've ever seen before. Luvvie makes the assertion that perception is usually more important than the actual truth. Considering how difficult it's been to debunk fake news stories or correct them when something that was misreported, do you agree with her assertion? The assertion that perception is more important than actual truth. For me, I wouldn't say more important. I think for me, it's perception is more powerful, or can be, than actual truth. There is so much power in what we perceive and what other people, like the general public, perceives to be true, because that will dictate your actions and how you move forward and what you think is going on. So truth is more important. Actual facts are more important. That is what our goal should be. That is what we should be aiming for. But perception can be incredibly powerful. And that is why I think it's so important that we are verifying sources, that we are checking facts. We don't just simply look at a headline and move on, looking at where information is coming from. She has this line in here, and I have to read it because I just thought it was so great. Where is it? She, after that line, that perception is more important than the actual truth, she said, as the old saying goes, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. And it's so true. So often lies can be so salacious and juicy, and by the time the lie circulates, even if we go back to correct it, it can be very hard to undo that damage. And even when the truth comes out, it can be tainted by this idea of feeling unsure as to what was true because of a previous perception, not knowing what to trust. So it is very powerful, and I think it's why it's so important that we have accurate information that's being disseminated. So number 3, my third question and final question in this section. Luvvie spends much of the chapter looking at the responsibilities and shortcomings of major media and news outlets as it relates to accurate reporting. But what responsibility do you think we have as the consumers of media and news to fact check, or what responsibility do we have in the spreading of fake news? And I'm going to go to a couple excerpts here that I think are really relevant. The first, Luvvie writes, it's like critical thinking has gone on permanent vacation since social media has dumbed down our ability to receive and analyze information. And then the second excerpt is from page 186. And she said, this is why media literacy is important. We need to know when we are being fed bullshit, which is always by the press, and we need to know where to turn when that happens. Citizens on the ground telling the stories. Then we need to confirm those sources. We must remain critical and questioning because we are being pissed on and believing it's raining. So while I believe media has an absolute responsibility and we should to report accurately, to not spread fake news, to not create fake news and pretend that it's not real, to have accurate sources, and if they do make a mistake, it needs to be not a small, quiet retraction. But we as the consumers of media and news have a responsibility to hold our news organizations to a higher standard. We have to demand nothing less than the truth. We need to stop simply reading clickbait headlines and hitting share and assuming that that is true. We consume the juicy drama, salacious stories at such a rate that they continue to put them out. We have to say enough, and it is our responsibility. If something sounds like crazy, you need to look into it, look further. Not everything on the internet is true, but Google can do a lot in helping you find out more reliable sources and see if something is factual, as she says in here. We have to do better, as so much of this book is about. It's about doing better, and I think this is an area where not only does our news outlets need to do better, but we need to do better, and we need to demand better. So before you go repeating anything that you heard or saw on Twitter, you need to find the actual facts. Look for what really happened. Find different sources. Look to more than one source of news. Don't always read the same newspaper. Don't always watch the same news station. find where there are discrepancies and seek out the truth. And I think that is our responsibility as citizens that are consuming this, to find better information and to demand it. So that is our first segment on Dumbed Down News. I would love to hear your thoughts on this and what role you think social media plays in the speed, what the 24-hour news cycle is doing to the way that we consume and report on different news items. Join me in the comments section. I will be posting the questions for you to look at. And Brittany will be joining us at 1:30. I think she's going to be talking about the privilege principle. So it's going to be really, really good. You don't want to miss it. And then I will be back at 2:30. She'll be back at 3:30, and then we'll round out the day with me at 4:30. So I hope you continue to join us, and we are dying to hear what you thought about the book. All right, bye.